Welcome in, Warchant Gameday. We are live in Orlando. Great to be with you. Great to be here at the Wall Street Plaza and Hooch, obviously, on the big stage as we get set for Florida State and LSU tonight at 7:30 right here at Camping World Stadium in Orlando. So it worked out well just a year ago. Tom Lang, my cohort yet again.
What's up, brother?
Good to be back with you,
Another
brother.
year, man. Another year.
Football is a great thing. Last year we were in New Orleans, obviously, for this contest. Florida State got the win, held on for dear life, but got the win, and it really set the stage for what ended up being an incredible season. Florida State getting 10 wins, and now that obviously elevates the status of this game and the thoughts of all FSU fans everywhere about what's possible, because Florida State, with roster retention and acquisition in the offseason, bolstered a roster that won 10 games, as I mentioned, and is a team that gets their quarterback. And this is a game that features two great quarterbacks, two quarterbacks that are premier in the game of college football. And I think that's really where we should start. The return of Jordan Travis, who, for him, there are Heisman stakes that, in play here, I guess, as he is certainly a guy that a lot of people think could be in position to win that award. Jaden Daniels is another one of those guys that when you look at the list of players tagged before the first game that they think can win the Heisman, he's another guy. So the quarterback's on display tonight. Both teams have a lot we can vet. Both teams have a lot of things that we can talk about because there's a lot of star player and star power on the football field tonight. But let's start with the quarterbacks. Jordan Travis has had a great camp.
Yeah.
So for those of you joining us online or joining us here and haven't had a chance to listen to our coverage, as we've been able to go to every practice, Warchant staff has been at every single practice. The only two that we did not get to were scrimmages that were closed to the public. So we have a good sense of how camp went and how it unfolded day to day, which players emerged, which players kind of surprised, which players disappointed, and everything in between. Florida State was very buttoned up, and let's start right at the top. Jordan Travis had his best camp by far that we've ever seen him have, and he had a good one last year, but this year there's a confidence about him born from last season, and I think it started with this game. If you go back to the LSU game a year ago, we weren't sure what to expect maybe from them and not sure what to expect from Jordan Travis, who still needed to take a big step forward. And it was in this game that he took that step because LSU threw the kitchen sink at him. He seemed to have a real good sense of what was coming pre-snap, made a lot of great throws and big plays in this football game, and ultimately Florida State got the win. I think from there you saw his confidence grow, that he could make plays from the pocket. He didn't have to be a guy that just ran around. He's a guy that could make throws, all the throws. He was confident with what he was reading, got comfortable in the offense. Mike and the rest of the staff seemed to get comfort in him as well, and they began to open up that playbook from that point forward.
Well, and he can run around if he needs to. That's the thing, too. He can live in the pocket. He can make the throws from the pocket. We've seen improvement on those throws from the pocket. Last Saturday, for example, when we went to that night practice inside Doak Campbell Stadium, he made 3 throws, the likes of which I have never seen him make. It's the Keon Coleman one down to the deep sideline. Yeah. There's one to Winston Wright that's anticipatory into a tight window. These are NFL-level throws. I'm just going to say it for what it is. Those are NFL-level throws that Jordan Travis is breaking off more consistently in camp. But it's the composure. Think about game 1 last year. That's what you're talking about. LSU throws the kitchen sink at Jordan, and he's composed. But then against Florida in the final regular season game, the offensive line is not holding up. His receivers are dropping balls left and right in that first half specifically, too. There were 2 or 3 that probably cost him about 90 or 100 yards worth of passing. And yet, what does he do? He puts the team on his back, literally, on one play, the scramble where it's marked down short on the 1-yard line. But that's like an 8-man rush. Everybody's in the backfield, and he eludes them all. So the thing is that Jordan can win on platform. He can win off platform. And that's a great, great equalizer in case LSU dials up some things that we're not ready for. Jordan, if they surprise us, Jordan can still get around it.
Yeah, and that's why I think Florida State fans come into this game feeling confident. They understand the magnitude of this contest, how good LSU is, and how much better LSU got as the season went on last year. Let's not forget, after LSU fell in the opener to Florida State, they went on to win the SEC West. They beat Alabama. They played in the SEC championship game, and you saw them get better and better as the year went on. So obviously it's a different-looking LSU team that Florida State faces this year, but I think it's a different-looking Florida State team that LSU faces this year. Florida State going out and getting Keon Coleman opposite Johnny Wilson now. You have a wide receiver tandem of 2 NFL guys. And then the emergence of Destin Hill as a true freshman, I think maybe one of the more revelatory things in this camp. That's a kid that, a lot of folks were waiting on, 2 years worth of waiting. People had heard about the explosiveness. They had heard about the elite athletic ability, but they weren't real sure how close he would be to being in football shape after not playing for 2 years. And so we kind of watched that very closely as camp started, but it really was a very short period of time, probably that first week of pads, when you really realized, well, Destin Hill's not going to need that much of an acclimation period. And lo and behold, we sit here today and he's a co-starter in the slot. That says a lot about a true freshman. It says a lot about how he could help this team. We'll see how he handles the bright lights tonight. First game of football for him in over 2 years. Happens to be against a great team in a primetime game. You never really know how kids are going to handle that. But given the way he handled the acclimation process in Tallahassee, it's hard to think that he's not, as he said, quote unquote, I'm born for this.
Yeah, oh, he is. And look, in a way, it's not a surprise to me that he's a co-starter, because if you keep yourself in football shape for 2 years, that you can arrive on campus for the first time, go through 7-on-7s, player-run practices, and now the coaches can be out there a little bit more, but you're in football shape? Like, that's really hard to do. Hakeem Williams was not in football shape for his first spring, and he had just played like 3 months earlier.
Right.
So if you are committed to that level, that you are in that type of physical condition, then that means you're about the work. You're about putting in every little thing that you need to do to be in position to be successful, which is why he climbed up the ranks. He's detail sound. I mean, it's funny to say because he's only been here for one camp, but if you're looking for somebody who's the embodiment of the philosophy of what this program is about, putting in work, this is Destin Hill.
I think what's weird about that is a quarterback. I mean, that's fine. He kept himself in shape. You understand that he wanted to get here and hit the ground running, and it's admirable that the kid did that for 2 years.
Well, that's football shape, too. That's
a little bit different. But I think it's even more admirable that, or maybe more surprising is a better way of saying it, that Jordan Travis has the kind of trust in him already where the coaches would deem him a co-starter. I mean, that's kind of the surprise there, because quarterbacks do not like to be hung out to dry. They're not going to throw the football to guys they can't trust to be where they're supposed to be. Obviously, Florida State's offense is far more complex than anything Destin Hill had in high school. That's just the nature of the beast when you go from high school to college. It's the way it is almost everywhere, no matter how the quality of high school play is. You have a huge culture shock and adjustment to the size of the playbook, everything else. You're getting used to that locker room, grown men, if you will, practically in some cases with fifth-year and sixth-year seniors. And you've got to find a way to not only get to know those guys and really endear yourself to them, but you also got to know that playbook backwards and forwards if you expect to play. So the fact that he did that is another good sign for Florida State. It really kind of speaks to how buttoned up this camp was. That seems to be the theme we've talked about a lot in the last few days building up to this game. You know, they may not win this game. We'll see, but I will say this. It won't be because they weren't focused. It won't be because they weren't locked in their preparations. They absolutely were almost professional in that sense, because you have a lot of older players. Everybody knows Florida State, this particular group, is built to win this year. This is the year. That's been the whole talking point has been, look, you got Jordan Travis to come back. You got Jared Verse to come back. You went out and got a guy in Keon Coleman who expects to be here for 1 year before he announces that he goes to the NFL. You have veteran players in Johnny Wilson, who's expecting to jump to the league after this. Jaheim Bell, comes in at tight end from South Carolina, and he's a guy wants to take it to the league. You have a bunch of guys. Trey Benson wants to go to the league. This is a money year for him. So you have all of these players, several of these offensive linemen as well, whether it's a Byers or Bless Harris, whoever you might be looking at. Casey Roddick. These guys are here mostly for one season and to take it to the league. You worry about cohesion. Didn't have any of those problems in camp. You worry sometimes if everybody's out for themselves. Definitely didn't have that problem in camp. And so now what you have is a veteran-laden team and a bunch of guys that have played a lot of football who've been about the work and want to go on to play the NFL. So they've been buttoned up.
Well, look, that's the thing about what we do. We're in that middle lane, which is a lot of fun because we cover the team. We're media members, but we're also alum. We're fans, and we're open about that. It's not. We don't need to be journalists here. So on the one hand, we're always going to be excited and pumped to watch Florida State kick off a season. Like, that's just what it is. That's why everybody's here right now at the Wall Street Plaza. But we're also excited on another level because we got to go see camp, and we do get to see those practices. And the quality of camp and the quality of practice each day was so much higher and better than it was just a year ago.
That's correct.
Last year's team won 10 games. They won this first game out in New Orleans. They beat LSU. That was something that helped put them back on the map after several losing seasons. That camp, those practices were not as good, did not have as many high-quality plays as this camp. Not even close. So that's why we get excited on a different level. Now, does that mean that they're impervious to laying an egg tonight? Of course not. Of course not. It's football. Weird things can happen. But this team is by far the most talented team that Mike Norvell's had. Not even close.
Well, and that's why everybody's eager. Last night we had this wonderful meet and greet and fan appreciation and all this. We were here at Hooch. It was incredible. I got to talk to so many wonderful Noles and just great people in general. And it's always great. We will always enjoy that. I love meeting people that listen to the shows and read
all over
content.
the country
from all over it's awesome. I mean that sincerely. It's a great time, and you get a chance to talk to people. But one thing is the other thing it allows us to do as a conduit. As somebody who's able to go to those practices and then kind of give context to the fans about what we've seen and what we're excited about and what we're worried about and everything in between. Is you also can gauge the fan base at these kinds of events. Where is their head at? Are they cautiously optimistic? Are they emboldened? Are they a fan base that is just starving? We saw that 2 years ago when we would have opportunities to meet folks that you could just see they were just yearning to be better. Last year there was cautious optimism. There was enthusiasm because we were all in New Orleans. It's fun to go to NOLA. There's a lot to do. Great food, great music,
outstanding
fun
time, great people. LSU's a great fan base.
It's an awesome fan. We had a great time, but there was sort of I'm excited to be in this game. We'll see. And then Florida State had the season that they did. The sense I got last night and the sense I continue to get as we do these shows is that most Florida State fans are expecting a huge season. This is a sort of a coming out party, kind of a coming out party for Florida State in the sense that you expect Florida State will, win 10 games, bare minimum. You expect Florida State has an opportunity to maybe make the college football playoff and win the conference. So that's sort of that's a different baseline that you go into a season for than we've had in 5 years.
Right.
And I, for one, embrace the hell out of that because it's been a minute since those kinds of expectations, those lofty expectations, have been rightfully cast upon a team that could do something about it and maybe fulfill those wishes.
Yeah, and I think this first month is the one that's going to potentially take us there. And that's why the expectations, they're so immediate. So if you had a ramp up like so many teams do, even that 13 season, Pitt, you open on the road against Pitt. It's their first ACC game. You were in that building. There was a lot of excitement. I
was on the 50.
But it wasn't LSU. You know what I mean? It wasn't the quality of this opponent. So seeing a lot of LSU fans talking to them last night at Hooch, again, these are two fan bases, I think, generally speaking, that get along. We don't have any issue with each other.
No.
We both can't stand the Gators. Yeah. Very simple relationship that we have with LSU fans. But they're the most talented offense that we're going to see in the 12-game season, and it's not relatively close. And I think we can say the same. I think we're going to be the most talented offense that they're going to see in 12 games. I know they play an SEC schedule, but given the weapons, the variety of weapons that Florida State has, and that's where the urgency, I think, in everybody's voices when we talked to them yesterday is huge test number one, right out the gate. We call it a get-out-of-jail-free card for the playoff. If you win this game, you can slip up because of the status of beating an LSU, this type of LSU, a top 5 team. If you can pull that off tonight, you got a freebie of a loss somewhere else as long as you finish as an ACC champion.
Yeah, as long as it's not a terrible loss to an unranked team.
But if it doesn't go your way tonight, then there's even more urgency for that road trip to Clemson in week 4. And if you don't win that one and you start your season 2-2, these expectations about the playoff and all, it goes away. It immediately goes away. You could still have a really good season and win the ACC, but if you're daring to dream about being in that Final Four, the last year of the college football playoff is a 4-team event. If you're dreaming about being in that, the tests are immediate for Florida State.
Well, I think you love the idea that, you're a veteran team. So most of the time when you play a high-profile game like this against another highly ranked team, in this case, as you said, top 10 team, you don't love the idea of playing that game other than the fun time on location because you like to ease into a season. But if you're going to play a game like that, you want the kind of team that Florida State has in a sense that these guys have played in it and they're also all veteran-laden and they can't wait for that test. I think that's the other thing we heard every player to a man say after practice this year. It's like, we can't wait to get to that game. And I think that's a belief in themselves. That's a belief in what they're going to be able to produce. That's a belief in what they think their teammates are and what they think this team is and what they think this program has become. Yep. And so it's not just the fan base, it's the players. And, Mike Norvell has spoken very highly of his team all camp long, really hasn't had a lot of negative things to say about what he's seen in practice. No. He seems to have the same sort of confidence we're alluding to.
Yes, there's no whoa in the message from the staff. You think about the way they came out of scrimmage number 2. So we don't get to go see the scrimmages. That's the only thing that they hold back from us, generally speaking, is watching the scrimmages. But we do get to talk to Mike Norvell, the coordinators, afterwards. And I don't know how it's possible, but all 4 coordinators, if you want to include John Papuchis, because I count Mike Norvell also as an OC, co-OC with Alex Atkins, they're all thrilled with how it turned out.
Yeah.
How's that possible? Usually somebody's mad. Usually the defense is mad because the offense had a good day or vice versa. But they were all happy with how it went. They're all speaking glowingly about the talent that they have, the commitment level, the culture. And then the players this week, you could Trey Benson or Johnny Wilson or Jared Verse going on multiple places nationally talking about that they expect to go to the playoffs. So nobody is holding back. It's not like we're pumping expectations and then Mike Norvell is saying, well, hold on, guys. This is a young team or this team, some things got to break our way. No, everybody is in lockstep, confident.
Mike has figured out early on, I admired this pretty early on with the fact that he understood to temper expectations a couple of years ago.
Yes. Yes.
There were moments where you could tell, kind of pump the brakes for the fans because he understood that they were lacking in a lot of areas. He understood that the team wasn't really ready to win at an elite level. Yeah. And, that's something that his predecessor did not do a good job of. He set the bar really, really high, told everybody they were going to score.
It's not a retool, not a rebuild.
Yeah, it's not a rebuild. We're going to score 60 points a game and all this stuff. And then you go out against Virginia Tech and you get smoked and immediately the fans don't trust the coach anymore and things begin to unravel. Mike was smart enough to understand that it was a rebuild and that there was a lot that he had to do and instill. And so the reason I bring that up is Mike's not prone to hyperbole. He's not prone to saying that a team is something they're not.
Correct.
Or to try to talk up a team that is only going to disappoint. That's not smart, right? In business, generally speaking, you kind of want to over-deliver. Under-promise and over-deliver.
And he's done that in recent years where he said that they're very young. He's always talked about even when they kind of weren't.
He still alluded to
a lot of young players. You've got 21-year-old sophomores because of COVID eligibility, dude, I guess.
But he didn't do anything like that this year, though, is the point. He did not temper that. He did not talk down what the team could be. He only talked about championship-level expectations. So the head coach, who's had a good read on his team through the first few years, did a good job of basically tempering in the past, elevating now. It's almost like he's taking off the harness to these guys, saying, okay, you are ready. Go do what you were built to do. Go take care of business. You're ready. I'm giving you the blessing. Yeah. I'm saying to the press, we have championship-level expectations.
And remember when he first said it? It was last year.
We all looked at each other.
It was last year in bowl prep before they came here to play Oklahoma. In bowl prep, he used the word champ, and he says it behind the scenes to us. When he says, we get a spiel every year about the media policy before the luncheon, and the rules are set for what we need to do. But he says, guys, there are times where I don't want you to be able to report what you see at practice because we've got to go check on injuries, for example. But I'm not an idiot. Ask me a question, and I will use my words carefully. I always choose my words carefully.
Yeah.
Okay, fair.
Quote, unquote, yeah.
So if that's the case, and you say championship and bowl prep, he knew two things. Number one, the Battle's End was going to retain a lot of dudes, and he was going to get a lot of these guys back for another year.
Bravo to the Battle's End.
Correct. And number two, he knew that they were loaded and fortified in a way that he hasn't been here. They've got a fighting chance. They don't have to scheme around offensive line deficiencies without wide receivers who can win a one-on-one matchup in order to break off a 40-yard run. I don't have to do that anymore, thinks Mike Norvell. He's right, because he's got Johnny on one side. He knew they were going to go get somebody on the other side. Jaheim Bell comes in. He knows he's got balance on offense, so he feels equipped for the fight. Now, the question today, I think the answer is yes, but how much more equipped for the fight is the defense going to be? And can you get an honest gauge of how equipped they are for the fight? Because your first test, which is always tough, the first game of the season, is against a gifted and dynamic offense in LSU, a really dynamic offense in LSU, and the best running quarterback Florida State's going to see this season without breaking a sweat. And this is easily in Jaden Daniels, the best quarterback they're going to see all season long when it comes to breaking the pocket.
Yeah, and that's the frustrating pain because you can do everything right, and then he makes a play, makes a guy miss, and extends that play. And next thing you know, good coverage turns into a guy getting behind a corner or a safety because you can't cover people for 6 seconds, especially if those people are like Malik neighbors. So you have guys that are going to play in the NFL that are efforting to get open as well. And so these are the things that are the uncertainties. This is why you aren't as completely emboldened about the chances Florida State walks out of here with a win as you would be against anybody else. It's because there's an elusive quarterback who can make a lot out of a broken play. We saw it in the second half of last year's game.
Correct.
There were a lot of things that FSU did right in last year's game, only to see Jaden Daniels extend plays and have success.
Yeah, the most rush yardage he had on non-design runs all season long came against Florida State.
Yeah.
Now, that's two reasons. Number one, we didn't know what we were facing. And number two, Brian Kelly hadn't built the offense around him just yet. If you look at the design runs for Jaden Daniels in the 12-game season, and I'll include the SEC championship game, The Florida State game last year had featured the fewest design runs for Jaden Daniels, just 2.
Yeah.
But by the end of the year, you're seeing games where there are 8 and 9, and against Alabama, I think it was 8 or 10 design runs. You've got to do that because that's his gift.
It changes the math.
Now,
too,
they
yeah.
believe this year that he can throw the ball down the field a little bit more. They want to be more vertical, but he lived 0 to 10 yards from the line of scrimmage, and then they scared you with his legs. They don't even have to call a design run because you have to account for him. So that's the problem that you're facing. It's like an inverted season in a way. This feels like a playoff game to me because of the equity you can build with a victory, but then also the quality of the opponent you're playing. So many teams this weekend are playing nobodies relative to who they are. This is a top 10 matchup for a reason.
And also because you saw what they became and you saw what Florida State became. And now here we are at the end of that season that both fan bases were excited about for their respective clubs. They get this their first game. You already know what they are. You pretty much saw it. They added to it. There are some transfer portal guys for LSU, a bunch of them, especially on that defensive line.
Yeah.
And then you know what Florida State's done as well.
Yeah.
So all they did was add pieces to an already impressive run.
Right.
And now here they clash again. And, we talk about some of these numbers, and I look at it. I brought this up earlier. The other reason for all the confidence and the enthusiasm that I was describing last night in this fan base is because the second half of last season, the numbers are unbelievable when Florida State goes on the 7-game win streak.
Yeah.
And they averaged 42.2 points per game, 7.1 yards per play during that winning streak. They were also first nationally was FSU, and points per drive, first in scoring drives per game, second in yards per drop back pass. So, you're beating them every which way to Sunday.
And think about all the drops they had in a couple of the games, too.
Yeah.
And yet these numbers are still the way they are.
They were third in the nation in gains of 20-plus yards per game in the last 7 games of the season. Third in the nation. So whenever you talk about a team that is 1, 2, or 3, and all these explosive numbers, third down conversion rate, they were 9th in red zone touchdown rate. That's obviously another top 10 statistic for this offense in the second half. They were ruthlessly efficient is the way you would describe the offense over the last 7 games. Now, I know the counter to that. The counter to Florida State being ruthlessly efficient is, who did they play in those 7 games?
Correct.
They played a defense in Oklahoma that was terrible. They played a Florida team that was 6-6 and not good. You go back through the Syracuse games and all the
Syracuse game was over the moment
it was
they kicked
over
it.
the second they kicked the game off. There are a lot of outmatched opponents late in the year.
Yeah.
That got overwhelmed in the first quarter and didn't have the personnel to compete. So that's why I know nationally you'll hear people say, well, go easy now. Let's see what Florida State is. They did win 10 games. They got to play a bunch of backup quarterbacks. They didn't play anybody down the stretch. They even struggled with a couple of those teams that didn't have good seasons. Are we sure? Well, this is why I always say the national media is oftentimes, and I'm not ripping them because I get it. Unless you're here every day to watch the new pieces to the puzzle arrive and acclimate, you can't know what Florida State looks to be. But we can because we're there. And they are ruthlessly efficient again because of those acquisitions. They have more options than they had when they were on that run. Now, I'll grant you, LSU is better than every one of those teams that I just talked about. But I also think Florida State is infinitely better and with more options than they were a year ago on the offensive line, in the offensive backfield, at wide receiver, and certainly at tight end. When you think back to what they've done to that group now, that was a group that was a minus group that is now a plus group.
But even given that, and we know how camps go, it could be spring camp or fall camp, the defense is going to control the first week or so because the offense, there's more moving parts to it. It's got to be in sync, and that timing does take a little bit longer to get up to speed. But with all of that said, and all the targets that Florida State has and the variety of which that they do, that the defense could still win days at practice. Last year's defense couldn't have done that to this offense as they have it right now. Could you imagine last year's defense, as thin as it was on the defensive line, as bad as it was at times in the secondary? Like if you got Omarion Cooper out there, who was a completely different player last year in a negative way, and some of those other guys at corner, and this offense was going against them in preseason camp, I don't know the offense would lose a day, like one of them. But this camp, you saw reps were won by members of the secondary like an Azarie Thomas and a Fentrell Cypress. Shaheem Brown had a good end to camp. I thought he got stronger as camp went along.
Yeah, much better end.
You know what you have in terms of offense when you're looking at the draft prospects and the skill. That the defense could rise up on a given day and command more than just a period or a play against this offense tells me that the defense has improved too. Just overall, in a simple way, this team has just gotten better across the board. You're right to point out the offense. Those are the shiny new toys. Those are the Ferraris. But the defense has gotten a lot better as well.
Well, it'll be a test. This is the year that Adam Fuller and the defensive staff have to prove to the fans that they're coming along for the ride.
Yeah.
I mean, we trust Mike. We trust Alex.
Right.
We know what Ron is now doing with this receiving core.
Yep.
They're loaded in the offense. Tony Tokars has done a great job with the
Night and
quarterbacks.
day for Ron Dugans, too, because you think about the development on top of the recruiting. It's been night and day.
Proud of Ron. Glad to see that he succeeded. He was this close to being out of here.
Yes,
I would have hated to see that. He's a Nole and a great one at that. So it's good that he was able to get it turned around. But the truth is, when you talk about trust, you are talking about the offensive staff over and over and over again. Now, Patrick Surtain has come in on defense and done a great job in this camp. He has instilled a different mentality in this secondary. We certainly thought that was a good hire. I celebrated that hire. But it's different on game day, so we'll see. I mean,
Correct.
I think those guys obviously are in good position. Patrick, so far, off to a good start. We got to play football games. You always trust Odell if he's got dudes. He's got dudes this year. They'll play well up front. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, we don't know about the linebackers right now. And Randy, and I've talked about that a lot. And we'll see about Adam's scheme and how well they do. Yeah. It's not all, set it and forget it. It is offensively. It is not defensively. And they could be very, very good. They now have the personnel to play well. That's why, if for some reason they don't, we're going to have a real different conversation.
Well, correct. They don't need to be a top 10 defense, though.
No,
they need to be squarely in the top 30, I think.
Yeah.
And that's good enough. And the thing is, if Florida State on offense wants to go with tempo, that might lead to higher output production for the opposition because that's just the nature of going
more
fast.
Reps, yeah.
I mean, look at the Colorado TCU game yesterday.
I don't think either of those teams can play defense, but
they can't, but they move fast is what I'm saying. Like,
yeah.
Even with the new clock rules, I had the under 63.5 because I thought it'd be clunky. By the middle of the first quarter, I said, oops, I made that's
lost this one.
Wrong.
Yeah.
So the thing is, if you're going to run tempo on offense, then it might lead to higher point totals where 24 is a really good game. 27 might be a really good game if we're trying to max possessions. So that's the thing to keep in mind. But you're correct in saying that if you're looking to evaluate Adam Fuller, it is now fair to do so because last year I can make a compelling argument that says, what the hell did you want him to do?
Yeah, the defensive line was
he didn't have the
riddled
defensive
with injury.
line.
The guys that did play were hurt. You lost Fabian Lovett for most of the year.
Right.
You didn't have
both your
this
linebackers
version of
had
Farmer.
one arm.
Yeah. There's no doubt. But again, that excuse is not in place now.
Correct.
You've got guys. You've got veteran players in the secondary that you've coached up, that you've been a part of, that you recruited. You've got a defensive line that is an SEC defensive line. I mean, when we talk about the things that separate the conferences, that's generally it. The defensive line, the offensive line, and the SEC. Usually there's a greater depth of talent than their opponents. Florida State matches that right now on the line of scrimmage. So correct. You really can't hide behind we didn't have guys. I couldn't get to the quarter. You got guys now. You got a top 10 draft pick in all likelihood, top 15 off the edge in verse. Patrick Payton's an all-conference guy, and he's only getting better.
And he's only going to be in singles. He's going to go one-on-ones.
Opportunities galore. You brought in Braden Fisk, who's been a star of camp in Western Michigan. This is a guy who's dominated his reps. Really is going to be a fun player to watch all year long. He plays with extreme violence and quickness. He's 300 pounds. He loves the game.
Sudden violence.
He's passionate over it. So he's been added to this mix now. Farmer is arguably the strongest guy on the team. He's put on 52 pounds since he arrived. He's a difference maker
he's
in the
a
middle.
dense-looking guy.
Fabian Lovett at the end of camp got back and got healthy, looked ready to go. So you just don't have the excuses now. You got guys that'll keep people off your linebackers. You got veteran players at either corner. You brought in Fintrell Cypress, who was an all-ACC guy from Virginia, so you've got him now. Renardo Green started every game last year at corner for you. You really they have to play well. That's all there is to it.
They've got good players.
They got good players.
You better do well.
You got to play well, man. That's all there is to it.
If you don't do good things with good players, you're not a good coach.
It's real simple, the math.
Yes.
It's real simple, the math.
So two things. Number one, since you brought up his name, Fentrell Cypress, much better fall camp. In spring, it was squarely meh.
Didn't feel like being there.
It wasn't much pizzazz to it, but he was solid in fall camp. So that's nice to see because, if you're checking in now as a Florida State fan on game day and you just skip camp, you said, I can't do it. It's too much. Well, Fentrell got a lot better in fall camp, more like himself. But then with Fabian, the one time Fabian Lovett was healthy last year was this game.
This game.
And I'm not even going to look at the Jared Verse impact, and I get that he had a huge impact, but he's going against a freshman left tackle last year. That's not the case for LSU now, so that's more of a fair fight. But the interior, you think about the way that Florida State did hold its own and in some ways win on the line of scrimmage against LSU's run game last year, and it's because
They straight up won.
Because he was healthy. You know, he got hurt on the final drive of the game because we can't catch a pitch on a toss.
Right.
But before that, Fabian was healthy, and you got to see what he was at full speed and full strength. He claims he's stronger now. My one concern, now that we're at game day, I think I can say this, the moratorium might be lifted a little bit. I just wonder about his stamina. Will he be able to play a full game? Because they ramped him up very meticulously. By that, I mean slowly. So can he handle a full game's worth of reps? We've got more guys to rotate in and out, but I do want to see what his stamina is like tonight.
That's a completely fair observation, too, because I question that as well. That's why I mentioned Farmer a lot. I think he's going to play a big role in this game today. Yeah. Fabo is going to have to get into game shape as the season progresses. It's great that he's back healthy. He'll have an impact on this game, but probably not the sustained impact you expect him to have as the season wears on and he gets back into game shape. So Farmer's going to have to fill that role. Fisk is going to have to fill that role. Dennis Briggs is going to have to fill that role. Yeah. Got a lot of guys there. Yeah. You know, we haven't mentioned much of Dennis Briggs, but Dennis Briggs had a good camp as well. He's finally completely healthy. It's what it looks like to me. You know, he's not as dynamic a player as, say, Darrell Jackson would be if he were out there, obviously.
But he's above replacement level, I think.
He is definitely above replacement level. So I think there's a guy that if you could get him back, and we'll see, by the way, because there seems to be momentum now over there at North Carolina that Walker is going to end up, even though he didn't play last night, get his waiver approved. If that happens, I mean, Darrell's got to get his. Yeah,
I wonder if it's the NCAA's way of instituting a one-game suspension because they just want to drag their feet. We don't need to get locked down into the NCAA's inefficiencies. We'd be here for 10 hours. But if you do get Darrell Jackson back, that's a game changer for the Clemson game. Love to have him back for week 4.
Love to have him back for the season. It changes everything. I mean, that guy is a dominant player.
But you did not have Darrell Jackson or this version of Farmer last year in this game, and Fabian was more than adequate. So if he can give you 25, 30 snaps tonight at Fabian Lovett level strength, that increases Florida State's chances, immensely, of controlling the line of scrimmage. And again, you look at this situation, there's some similarities between this year and last year. That Mason Smith is unavailable tonight. NCAA, like LSU, they understand us. They're saying, yeah, we agree. NCAA sucks. This is stupid. But Emory is also out, the running back. These are two guys that were missing for LSU. I understand that they're not as dynamic in the running back room as maybe Florida State is, but that's their best running back that they're missing tonight. So
you prefer not to be without him,
yeah, if you want to be full strength in a game like this, LSU is just a little less than, and so is Florida State because Darrell Jackson's not there. That dude could impact the game in a huge way. But they'll have to get by with Fisk and Lovett and Farmer and Briggs and a couple other guys tonight.
You're listening to Warchant Game Day live from Orlando in the Wall Street Plaza right outside of Hooch. Folks making their way in now as the day is young.
Got lucky, man. It's
build up to kickoff here in, what do we got, 7 hours? 7 hours. Hang in there, everybody. Yeah, we'll be with you till 2 o'clock, and then the music will be back and all that good stuff. But we're doing the show live. Good to see everybody on the chat. I know I've not gotten to some questions. We'll get some questions here in a minute as well. Hopefully everybody's making their way towards the Wall Street Plaza, downtown Orlando. It's a beautiful day. It's going to be a fun time. This will be a long tailgate, a long day. Pace yourself. Maintain. Make sure everybody's
sip on a spicy Maria.
If you want. Thomas just started to go bold early in the day here. He's just going to sip his way through.
I actually was very adult last night. I handled my business well.
We did. I did too. Yeah. Went back to the rental. It was good.
But
then at 2 o'clock today, I'm not going to be very adult. I'm going to go ahead and start having fun, and we're going to get.
I've got a post-game show.
Yeah. You got a post-game show. You and Gene got a post-game show. I do not have a post-game show, Tom. I'm going to get loose. I'm having a good time. I'm not driving. I don't have to worry about anything. We're going to have a good time, and we'll continue to go cover Florida State here on Warchant Game Day in just a moment. Live from Orlando. Stay with.
The finest football program in the state and rolling into 2023 with a Heisman contender. Stay connected with everything Florida State over at the ultimate Seminole sports source, Warchant.com. Expert insight from 5-star Irish O'Fell, the wit and perspective of FSU encyclopedia Corey Clark, the latest on FSU recruiting with entrenched reporter Michael Langston, and the most active community of FSU fans anywhere. Warchant.com is part of the On3 network with a national team of reporters and resources that have created industry-leading consensus recruiting ratings, transfer portal rankings, and NIL analytics. Head over to Warchant.com to take advantage of this offer as FSU heads into a 2023 season with sky-high expectations.
There's fun to be had every night at the Corner Pocket. Take-home prizes on Trivia Tuesdays and Beer Bingo Thursdays. And kickstart your weekend with Martini Fridays. Plus, happy hour runs every weekday and game day specials every time the Noles take the field. Watch all the best games at the Corner Pocket's Vegas Wall, featuring 560 inches of flat-screen TV heaven.
Oh, really?
The best food, the best drinks, and the best place to watch all the games. Tallahassee loves the Corner Pocket.
This is all the benefits of being a Warchant subscriber, right? If you're watching right now, you can look along with me. You'll see Garnet and Gold, 10% off, special Warchant Days promos each month with exclusive offers for Warchant.com members, priority access and free gear at Warchant events. That's doing some things, right? Got to do it. Ask Warchant anything subscriber-only shows featuring the entire staff, a little Q&A with the entire staff, and coming soon, a new mobile app with improved functionality and less ads. That's really a good thing. Join the largest FSU fan community on the internet, everybody, at warchant.com. It's not close. Let's go. Get it on. Sign up today. So everybody knows, Eddie, that you are a spectacular cook. Of course they know that. If they go into Bumpa's, the food is always good. I mean, everything on the menu.
Mm-hmm.
Everything at Gordo's is delicious. I always, of course, get the bungalow chungla, as I call it.
The panko lechon, Jeff.
Is that what is the pork?
The panko lechon, Jeff.
Okay, the bungalow chungla. It's delicious. All these things, all the items, everything you do, a master cook. But, sir, I would ask you, what is a skill that you possess that you're particularly proud of that nobody would know and that you could share with us here?
Growing hair, Jeff. Growing hair.
So, Gordo's, bringing the flavor and flair of Cuban food to Tallahassee since 1996. Welcome back. We're live from the Wall Street Plaza right outside of Hooch. We say thank you to everybody that is here. We're with you till 2 o'clock, and then the music takes over. Good times, and we continue the tailgate party. But welcome on in. Also, everybody on the chat. I know we have some questions to get to that I did not get to, and some people to acknowledge for their kindness as well.
We do. Nearly 1,000 of you right now watching all over the country. And if Director Ben wants to switch to the crowd cam, if you can see us, they can see you at home. So tell your friends and family that you're here. So wave to everybody if you're out there.
They're starting to come in. There it is. There we go. We got the camera going.
So Philip is the first. He says LFG, and he loves us. So that's it. Not really a question there, but we appreciate Philip's contribution.
And love.
I saw a Z-Chan popped in there during the break. Lewis also, thank you very much, Lewis, for the contribution. He says he loves FSU's chances because of the rest of the field this weekend, watching the other games and the quality of it. And I think that's actually a point we can play off of here, which is, given what you saw in camp every day between Florida State's offense and defense and the quality of camp and those practices versus what you saw, you took in a lot of football yesterday when we weren't doing the meet and greets. I didn't see much that looked like what I saw in camp, which is really good news.
Yeah, nothing really worried me in terms of comparing the teams and what we have from a personnel standpoint and what some of the other teams have around the country. Now, obviously, when you watch Georgia and you see Brock Bowers do crazy superhuman things, you kind of realize that that's a different thing. But if you're only comparing yourself to Georgia or Alabama or schools of that ilk, Ohio State, you're in a good place. You're in a good place. So, yeah, I didn't see anything. I will say that I do think that there are some electrifying offenses right now around college football. Washington's got one of them, obviously. Oregon's got another one. You know, you'll see some teams that can put up points the same way that Florida State will put up points. But just from an athletic standpoint, I didn't see anything that scared me.
There was a day in camp where the defense had won the day before, and they had started again in 11-on-11, and they were winning. And internally, I wasn't talking to anybody on staff, but internally I was like, offense, guys? Like poking him with a stick. Guys, wake up. And then Norvell broke out counter on the defense, and it was like a gain of 25. And it was like, oh, yeah.
You still have that.
They weren't even, they're fighting left-handed, like Inigo Montoya. And then, boom, they pop off one of their signature plays, and the offense is rolling, and they overwhelm. When the offense got going in camp, it was breathtaking to watch because of how overwhelming it can be.
Well, you're getting back into the conversation about what we expect to see in a way, and I really think that they're best suited to run tempo because of that, Tom. I mean, once they pick up a first down and you can keep your personnel on the field, I've made this point a lot leading up to this game. It's such an advantage when you've got the kind of duplicity that they have with player for player, right? They've got guys that are multiple, guys that can block and go out and catch a pass. They got guys that you don't have to sub out for certain packages. You know, you don't have to be third and short, got to get a different package in here. Second and long, got to get a different package in here. Because you're also allowing the opposing team to sub. And you see that, right? The refs come in and they stand by the center and they stop play because the other team has the right to substitute to match your personnel changes. Florida State does not have to sub. I mean, you're going to. Guys get tired eventually. But drive for drive, if you get it going, you can go now.
Balance. It's totally balanced.
You got to get going now. And at that point, because you have so many guys that can do so many things, I don't think you pull those guys off the field. I think you make the defense stay as is. Thank you, brother. And you go from there, and you just try to get this team worn down. That is a really talented personnel on that LSU defense. That defensive line's good. The linebackers are some of the best in the country. They may have the best individual linebacker in the country in Harold Perkins. So you got guys that you want to try to wear down, and you can do that with tempo with this team.
Well, the other thing, if you're playing true linebacker and Harold Perkins is playing not on the edge this year, they might mix him in to play the role that he did last year for LSU's defense. But I am fascinated to see what a sideline-to-sideline linebacker Harold Perkins looks like. And if he struggles today, that might not necessarily be about Harold. It might be about this offense, because as a linebacker, we throw so many different looks at you. Mike Norvell does, and there's a question about Mike Norvell's play calling. In fact, questioning Mike Norvell's play calling. We'll get to that in just a second. But in terms of the gaps, in terms of the directions we go, like, we can run counter 80 different ways. There was a coach's convention, I think it was an hour-long lecture that Alex Atkins did in the offseason on counter, and all the different ways that they can dress it up and all the things that they can run off of it. Well, if you're in the middle of the field, if you're Harold Perkins, you are going to be in conflict, and your intellect is going to be put to test. We know he's an absolute freak athletically, but in terms of diagnosing, instincts, getting downhill, making plays, I am fascinated to see what he looks like, because this is an evolution in his game. Hopefully he's slow to evolve, because it would be to Florida State's benefit.
You'd like to think that. You hope that, but I'm not real sure. Justin asked that question you were alluding to. I do want to answer this because it's a kind of a two-part thing. He asked the question. Thanks, Justin. Appreciate the contribution. Is nobody worried about Norvell's play calling? It's redundant, and we lost 2 games last season because of sketchy coaching decisions. Well, I think that everywhere Mike Norvell has ever been, the offense has been productive. There's no getting around that. You go look at his history, go look at the numbers. He's been a guy that could coach up offense to make explosive plays, and playmakers, as he always talks about, are featured in his offense, and he can really beat you however his personnel fits the game plan for that day. Teams run what they run. Okay, so when you see redundancy in an offense, it's because you have a core set of plays, and then you run everything off of those plays.
Right.
You set up those plays by running your core offense. So you are what you are. If you're an option team, then you're going to run the option. You could say that's redundant. But, my man, that's what you do.
But you're Navy.
You run the option. Now, off of that option, you might have a lot of wrinkles from the same formation. Florida State's no different. They run a pro-style offense, obviously, and spread it out, and you can play tempo, and they can do a lot of different things, but they run what they run. Now, off of that, they've got a ton of variety. So you're always going to see an offense look similar, especially when you're focused on your team every week. You're going to know exactly what their base is, what their core plays are, and you might get a little upset here and there if they tend to stick with them too long if something's not working. But
unless
remember,
you're playing Miami.
Yeah, they're setting things up. And so I disagree a little bit there, Justin. I don't think he's redundant in that sense. But this second part of the answer that I want to give is, I think, the more fun way of looking at the team, and probably the more realistic way. Remember, they've only built to this point. They've only built to a place where they finally have a depth of talent that gives them the opportunity to do more things. They were, we had the COVID year, and then you had the 5 and 7 year. They weren't any good. They didn't have enough good players, for lack of a better term, or Florida State caliber players. That's a better way of saying it. So they were sometimes overmatched. And you're not going to try to deviate too far from what you are if you don't have guys that can make exceptional plays when something has broken down. If you don't have guys that can change the scoreboard with one guy making you miss, something like that. If you don't have that, you kind of got to shorten games, stay to who you
correct.
are, hope to create some turnovers, maybe win field position battle, and go from there. The last 7 games of last year was a better indicator. I know the opponents, and I'm with you on that. But you saw how much growth Florida State had offensively post NC State. That NC State game is the worst game of the year last year, and it's not close because of how poorly Jordan played, how poorly the receivers played, and I don't think Mike had a great day.
Score 20 points, you win. That's,
Yeah, they had a bad day at the office.
Yeah.
Nobody's immune to that. But they learned something from it, which is abundantly clear. Because from that point forward, you saw a totally different team. You saw a team that grew in confidence and it really became more varied and trusting of the offensive skill players. That's why they averaged 42.2 points per game in those 7. That's why they led the country in several categories. Lots of people play bad teams over the course of 4 or 5 weeks. Do you lead the country in offense when you do? Because we did.
Right.
So that's a different look of what Florida State was. And I think it's also more indicative of what Florida State will be now that they've continued to infuse talent on this roster.
Yeah, and I think to his point on the question, you're going to see more variety this year because they got more good players at more different positions. Tight end, namely, is one place I would look at first. But the depth of talent at receiver, the variety of running backs that you do have, you've got everything from a speedster at running back to everything like Trey Benson to Keziah Holmes, who can help you in short yardage if Trey needs a rest on a certain play because maybe it's the third quarter and he's been out there a while. So you've got a lot of variety at tight end. Kyle Morlock is more of your standard receiving tight end. He's a little leaner for 6'6". He's a large man, but he's a little leaner. Jaheim Bell is a combo player, H-back type, and Marquise Douglas is going to line up next to a tackle, and he's going to block and release for you. So you've got variety there. But the other thing I'd say is, this, as you've said, and as it's one of Mike's cliches, but the offense is designed for playmakers, which means the offense has simple reads for the quarterback before the snap of where the one-on-one matchup is going to be based upon the formation. So it's not like there are plays that have progressions like a Bill Walsh offense where you go 1 to 4 or 1 to 5. Yeah, but there are more decisions that are made before the snap. And there are options that can be exploited before the snap. Not only a read option after the snap or a 1 through 5 in the pocket for a pocket pass, but it's about motion. It's about variety of formation with the same personnel in order to know where the safety is going to be on a given play, where the linebacker is going to be on a given play. And Jordan will know at that point, ooh, I should run check here. Or, oh, Jaheim is the one-on-one matchup. And the thing that if you look at Jordan Travis numbers, and you broke these out this week on the wildly popular Jeff Cameron Show, 1 to 3 p.m. in Tallahassee.
Thank you, sir.
And 1 to 3 p.m. here on Warchant TV, the targets are spread all over the lot.
Yeah, so
he's not about a player. He's about what's the open play, what's the proper read, which is very important because that's what this offense is about. It's not about force-feeding somebody because he's your tallest receiver. It's go find the one-on-one and win the one-on-one.
You alluded to these numbers, so I will reference directly what I said on the Jeff Cameron Show, and as you correctly pointed out, wildly popular Jeff Cameron Show. Travis, never uncomfortable in those last 7 games, completed 67% of his passes, 15 yards per completion. Spreading that, think about that. 15 yards per completion.
First down every time
he spread the ball out is what Tom is alluding to, by the way. And those catches, no receiver even averaged during that stretch 3 catches a game. That's how spread out it was. In bulk, over those 7 games, Johnny Wilson caught the ball 16 times for 405 yards. Ontario Wilson 11 times for 199 yards. Kentron Portier 8 times for 143 yards. Ja'Kai Douglas 9 times for 117. Malik McClain.
I don't remember any of those, by the way.
I don't.
Catches.
I don't either. Well, the one big one, but that's about it. Malik McClain, who's no longer on the team, he's playing at Penn State.
Those.
10 for 115. Cam McDonald and Marquise Douglas, Biscuit and Cameron McDonald had 18 catches for 250 yards. Lawrence Toafili and Trey Benson combined to catch the ball 20 times for 303 yards. That's during that stretch. And the wideouts obviously made defenses have to really space because of their versatility. You saw that a year ago in his versatility of throw. And you go back to what that did in the running game. Benson and Toafili averaged 138 yards rushing per game, 5.9 yards per carry. For Benson, over 4 yards a carry after contact. You know how viciously he ran. Right. That's all over the 7 wins at the end of the season. So those numbers speak to a team that figured out who they were. Correct. It speaks to a team who kind of understood at that point, hey, these are the guys we can trust. Jordan figured out who he was, and they didn't want to go backwards.
Well, and he knows where the ball should go before the snap. That's the thing because of those reads. It's only going to get easier for him to make the reads. Now, you have to execute the play. That's a very different thing. And sometimes, the other guys get in the way of you executing the play because they're really good. And LSU's got a really, really good defense. So that can happen. But the proper read is going to be easier for Jordan Travis to diagnose because they have more weapons. And the fun thing, and there was a question from Jeff in the chat about the lines of scrimmage. And a lot of people talking about how LSU is going to win both lines of scrimmage. He doesn't believe so, but he hears that talking point an awful lot. It's going to be fun to watch Florida State be in situations where people aren't teeing off against the run like they have the last couple of years and saying, prove that you can throw, Jordan Travis. I don't think they can do that anymore because the receivers are too gifted on the outside that you've got to account for them and play Florida State honestly, which means they should be running into more favorable settings, 6- and 7-man boxes. And that's where it gets fun because you can see big-time numbers from the running backs.
So you talk about what LSU's defense is. They're projected to be the 14th best defense, SP+. Now, that could be a top 5 defense, could be a top 20 defense. We'll end up seeing what they are, but they made adjustments there on that defensive line, brought some guys in. The only time teams moved the ball against them last year, they were namely top 10 offenses for the most part. And Florida State certainly figures to be one of those. Here's where you get excited. And it also speaks to the modern game. So we'll see. I sense that both offensive lines are going to have success against both defensive lines today in pass protection. And if they're able to do that, it's really impossible for a defense to get too many stops, frankly. LSU's defense against top 10 offenses last year gave up 40.3 points per game. So again,
wait a minute. What was that?
LSU's defense versus top 10 offenses last year gave up 40.3 points per game.
They better have gotten better.
Okay, but you can say that about Florida State's defense too when they played good offenses. They didn't get stops.
Agreed.
The bottom line is both teams think their defense is a lot better. But I would go a step further and say it may not matter because the modern game is an offensive game.
Yeah.
The rules are in place for offenses to win, and both teams have veteran quarterbacks in this game and veteran offensive lines that I think will slow these defensive lines. So even if both teams are much better defensively, I still think this is why most people, games are weird, they're unto themselves. We don't know how it's going to go. If it did, we'd all be rich. We'd be in Las Vegas and we'd be living in a mansion.
Biff Tannen is who we'd be.
Right.
Yeah.
But the numbers seem to suggest that this is going to be a high-scoring game. You've seen that total drift up through much of the week, finally settling in on like about 56.5. I think I saw the public, I know, was betting that 80-something% on the over, but the sharps are betting the over too. So I think that speaks to, again, people recognizing these two offenses and the way the modern game is played.
Yeah.
Look around. Even Georgia, which the last couple of years has had the best defense in football, and it's been dominant. But even Georgia has had some games. I mean, hell, LSU got blown out by Georgia, but they did score 30-plus points against them.
Right.
I mean, there have been moments where you look and you go, God, this team is the best defense in the country, and they can't get stops because the game really, if you're facing a good offense, is set up for offenses to score.
Yeah, so there's a nuanced point here that you made, and I agree with, but let's flesh it out because we've talked about our concerns in Florida State's pass protection, the interior of the offensive line, and yet you believe that we're going to be able to pass pro, and I agree. So how is that possible? Well, because Florida State can change the geography of the fight if they need to. Our concern is if you try to, let's say it's the NFL of 2012 and you've got a statue of a quarterback, he drops back and he passes the ball. If Florida State is in that situation for pass protection,
they're in trouble, yeah.
We are concerned. Yeah. We are concerned about
dude.
guard play.
Yeah.
This is our concern, dude.
Yeah.
But if that is an issue, just look at Florida State was worse at guard last year, in my opinion.
Yeah.
What did they do against LSU? They roll the pocket left and right. And it's not like Jordan's throwing on the run. It's almost a slide to a wide 9 almost of a gap. It's just way outside of the tackle one way or the other. Jordan stands tall, delivers, and fires.
And you'll know early, by the way. So for people listening right here, right now, and listening at home, you're going to know early what Alex Atkins thinks about their chances of winning in between the tackles.
Correct.
I think he trusts his two tackles implicitly. But inside, if they can't hold up in pass protection, to Tom's point, you're going to see Jordan get out of the pocket. They'll begin running plays in which he's moving to either side. They'll slide that pocket. You're not going to let him sit there and take a beating. And usually you can kind of figure these things out early. You know, if you watched the TCU-Colorado game yesterday, you learned pretty quickly that neither team was going to make a stop, and you also realized that TCU couldn't tackle. So that didn't change over the course of the game.
Other than that, their defense was awesome.
So you really saw that the loss of personnel there was very effective. And also, kudos to Colorado. They were buttoned up, ready to go on offense.
Just a quick observation about that game yesterday, in which I knew I should have hammered if I was in a state where
Over.
Well, I would have hammered Colorado, because TCU's defensive coaches were so bearish, not bullish, but bearish on their ability to cover, that they were giving 15-yard cushions to Colorado's receivers. Now, I get you that Colorado is better year over year, but if you're TCU playing a one-win football team and you've got corners that are giving 10 to 12 yards and they're in man,
well,
what does that tell you? That the coordinators are scared. They are scared to death.
There's a gentleman here who went to TCU, whose brother went to TCU, and he said yesterday, while we were talking, he goes, my brother told me to take Colorado. He said, we've lost 18 players, 2 coaches. We've got nothing. We're barren. We're overranked. I wish that guy had texted me or emailed me or something before that game was
Something
played.
that could have been brought to my attention
So
Friday.
it shows you early in the year, Vegas is gettable because that was a 20.5-point spread. So
Yes,
obviously
you
they
take
didn't
the
know
money
it.
line,
They didn't know it either.
You would have swept the money line.
But back to us. So for Florida State, in terms of blocking in the interior, it is an area of concern in pass pro in the interior. I'm not saying it's an overriding concern. I'm not saying you're going to lose sleep over this every week. It's just an area that I think they're not. It's not a plus area. It's not a strength. It's neutral.
No, this offensive line, if it goes the way the depth chart suggests, where Casey Roddick is your left guard and then Meach is your right guard, it's a good run blocking offensive line.
Very good,
legitimately good.
Yeah.
But pass pro, maybe.
Be interesting to see because they have options in a way they didn't have in the past. Now, there are guys that are starting today on the offensive line that had good camps. All of them did. And you're not going to say they didn't warrant the start. But this is also the first time that Florida State has enough dudes that if somebody's struggling in a particular matchup, Florida State can pull a guy out of this game with the quickness. I mean, you could slide Byers inside and move Bless Harris to right tackle. All of a sudden, you've got an option there. You can pull Meach if you don't like him at right guard and decide we're use one of these other guards. We have other guys, other options. So, to me, there were a lot of other options here for Florida State than they've had in the past on the offensive line to juggle and mix and match if they have to.
Correct. And Alex Atkins has said, and we'll get to a question from Baja Noel in a second, Director Ben, before we take a break. And our guy DJ Mine plays a track or two, so we can catch our breath for hour number 2. But Alex Atkins has said during camp that this is a unique situation he's in on the offensive line where they can rotate guys if they need to.
Absolutely. It's weird
and
to
I
see.
expect to see that.
You don't normally see it, but I kind of expect to see it too.
So the question from Baja Noel, and we appreciate his contribution to the program, was talking about ball hawking in the secondary. Now, we've talked about that in camp.
Long.
He's wondering if that's practice smoke and mirrors or if we believe that's a real thing.
I believe it's a real thing, but I also think it leads to giving up big plays. So I think Florida State's defense, we'll get into this in a bigger discussion in the second hour. I think Florida State's defense this year, where they will be improved, is they will create turnovers. And there's a variety of reasons for that. They're going to be up in some games and teams are going to be very predictable. But the other reason for it is I think that they understand, and I agree with this philosophy wholeheartedly. Dallas does it in the NFL. You have a corner or two that you say, look, you're really good at making plays on the football. Don't shy away from taking some chances. We want to take away possessions. We want opportunities for an elite offense. The more opportunities this offense has, the better off we are, right?
So even if you give up a big play, you give them the ball back.
You're going to get the ball back, right?
Yeah.
So take some chances and see if we can create turnovers because we know that invariably leads to wins. Turnovers, you watch the turnover battle every week, the numbers are overwhelming. So I think they will take more chances. As a secondary unit, I think they've been told to do that, and they have been ball hawking throughout practice. They don't always make the play, but they'll get there, and they're violent to the ball in the hands. They do things much more downhill.
They look for the ball.
They look for the ball. We haven't seen that in a long time. It does lead to giving up some big plays. So you're going to see some moments where a guy takes a chance and he gets burned. Or a coach picks up on a pattern and they set him up with a stop and go and he's jumping a route and you're going to give up a big play.
They don't want 1,000 paper cuts.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just think that's the way to play modern defense with the rules the way they are. I think you got to take some chances. So when we say they've been more aggressive in camp, and they have been, and we say they take a violent angle, get to the ball, all those, they have. But they've also, I think, put themselves in a position now to give up some big plays. So we're going to see some big numbers up there. Got to kind of know what you're looking at. Is this bad defense, or are they just being overly aggressive in some areas? So it'll be good. Warchant Game Day continues. We got one more hour to go here at the Wall Street Plaza for the show. If you're in the chat, we'll get to you with some questions. Place starting to fill up. Everybody's getting their drinks, their beverages.
People are in the shade, as you can see.
6 hours away, 6.5 hours away from game day, so from kickoff, so that'll be perfect. Take a quick break here on Warchant Game Day, live from Orlando at the Wall Street Plaza.
The finest football program in the state and rolling into 2023 with a Heisman contender. Stay connected with everything Florida State over at the ultimate Seminole sports source, Warchant.com. Expert insight from five-star Irish O'Fell, the wit and perspective of FSU encyclopedia Corey Clark, the latest on FSU recruiting with entrenched reporter Michael Langston, and the most active community of FSU fans anywhere. Warchant.com is part of the On3 network with a national team of reporters and resources that have created industry-leading consensus recruiting ratings, transfer portal rankings, and NIL analytics. Head over to Warchant.com to take advantage of this offer as FSU heads into a 2023 season with sky-high expectations.
There's fun to be had every night at the Corner Pocket. Take-home prizes on Trivia Tuesdays and Beer Bingo Thursdays. And kickstart your weekend with Martini Fridays. Plus, happy hour runs every weekday and game day specials every time the Noles take the field. Watch all the best games at the Corner Pocket's Vegas Wall, featuring 560 inches of flat-screen TV heaven.
Oh, really?
The best food, the best drinks, and the best place to watch all the games. Tallahassee loves the Corner Pocket.
This is all the benefits of being a Warchant subscriber, right? If you're watching right now, you can look along with me. You'll see Garnet and Gold, 10% off, special Warchant Days promos each month with exclusive offers for Warchant.com members, priority access and free gear at Warchant events. That's doing some things, right? Got to do it. Ask Warchant anything subscriber-only shows featuring the entire staff, a little Q&A with the entire staff, and coming soon, a new mobile app with improved functionality and less ads. That's really a good thing. Join the largest FSU fan community on the internet, everybody, at warchant.com. It's not close. Let's go. Get it on. Sign up today. So everybody knows, Eddie, that you are a spectacular cook. Of course they know that. If they go into Bumpa's, the food is always good. I mean, everything on the menu. Everything at Gordo's is delicious. I always, of course, get the bungalow chunglo, as I call it.
The panko lechon, Jeff.
Is that what is the pork?
The panko lechon, Jeff.
Okay, the bungalow chunglo. It's delicious. All these things, all the items, everything you do, a master cook. But, sir, I would ask you, what is a skill that you possess that you're particularly proud of that nobody would know and that you could share with us here?
Growing hair, Jeff. Growing hair.
Gordo's, bringing the flavor and flair of Cuban food to Tallahassee since 1996.
Welcome back, Warchant Game Day, hour number 2, as we're here at the Wall Street Plaza, downtown Orlando, prepping you for Florida State. LSU tonight, obviously a big one, a huge tilt, whole country watching, prime time, and a game between two top 10 teams that figures to be really well played, I think. I think you got two veteran teams that are going to play this game at a very high level. Oftentimes, these big games don't play out in a way that's, as
Up to
smooth
standard,
as you'd like to see, or standard of the quality
Not
of
last
the
year.
town. Yeah, this is going to be a game that I think both teams play well and execute. And so it really does come down to a couple of key things here, like who makes the big mistake win, who creates turnovers, whose quarterback handles the moment well. I think I started the show, Warchant Game Day, and by the way, we always appreciate you guys watching online here, certainly everybody that's come out. We appreciate you guys paying attention to Warchant TV, Warchant Game Day, and all the stuff that we do here. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time to do it. It's a 50% off
QR
kickoff
code right
special.
behind us.
QR code behind us. Go ahead and just hit that thing up. You get 50% off a Warchant membership right now. So look at the size of that thing. You got to do it. You got to make it happen. Join Warchant. The other reason to join Warchant is we're really proud of the work we're doing, but this is going to be a huge year for us. I think we got an opportunity to cover a team that is continuing to ascend back into the national limelight as a preeminent power. It's a fun ride to go on. It's a great job. I've always said I've been very, very lucky to be able to do this job, but to do it with this team of people, I'm always honored. Of course, Tom's my boy, but we got the whole gang, the whole band's together now, so we're good to go.
This is year 14 in some way of working together. Time flies, man. And
it does fly.
This is one of the unique settings we've ever had. We've had some awesome setups over the years. I remember the palatial setting of Newport Beach for the national championship game 10 years ago.
That one didn't suck.
That did not suck, but this is a proper stage at the Wall Street Plaza. And all the LSU fans out there, welcome. We love you guys. Had a great experience. We went to see the baseball series a couple of years ago, Super Regional.
You know,
Baton
one
Rouge.
thing that I will say real quick on that note to bolster your point. Yes, we get along swimmingly with LSU fans because we have a common enemy.
That's
And they're
correct.
not an arch rival. But you ever notice that it's a lot easier for us to get along with them because we always win? Like, we won that series in Baton Rouge in baseball to go to the College World Series. So, of course, we enjoyed our time in Louisiana.
Thank you for the hospitality.
And, of course, we enjoyed last year's game because we won that game.
Yes, we did.
So, and in the history of the series, by the way, we're 7-2, I believe it is. If we win tonight, it'll be 8-2. We really love playing LSU in most things. I'm just
Good to
saying.
see
Yeah,
ya.
it's good to see you again, guys. Yeah, no, I think it's always. I'm not sure that they would reciprocate. I'm not so sure they agree
Well,
with
the
you.
folks that were out here last night were legitimately, they were awesome. And I hope we play
No, they
them
are
twice
awesome. They're
this
great.
year.
They're great fans.
I
They're
hope
great
we play them twice because that means everybody's happy with what turns out over
Well,
the
it means
next
we're in
3
the college
months.
football playoff.
That
Is
is
what it
correct.
means. So
Yeah.
I agree with that. But all right, we also have some thanks to give out here as we start the second hour. I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. James B, as always, where are you? I thought I saw you over there earlier. James B, thank you, brother. Appreciate you. He writes, it's always fun to catch the GCS live. Go Noles. In this case, Warchant Game Day. Yep, appreciate you. Tom writes, do you gentlemen dislike? Oh, where'd it go? There it is.
That almost sounded like an F-bomb,
Do
but it
you
wasn't.
find gentlemen dislike Brian Kelly as much as I do? If so, please explain and please be descriptive. You know, I used to have a problem with Brian Kelly, but I would advise you, Tom, to go read an article that came out a few years ago where the guy attempted, and, you know, I'm not around the guy every day. I'm not there. I don't know. To kind of change who he was. He was heavily criticized. He was wrapped up in his own ego and all these other things, and people kind of pushed back on that, and, you know, he ended up finding yoga and doing all this stuff to try to lose weight and get his mind right.
I'm biting my tongue.
I don't know that he's a better person than he used to be. I don't know the man at all.
I believe he's a family man.
But he did make a mockery of his hiring with the ridiculousness of trying to fake an accent. But he is a good coach. And I will say that. He's a good football coach. He has routinely won everywhere he's been, including in places where it's hard to win, like Notre Dame, where you don't have the ability to just recruit everybody you want. That's why he left. He left. And we'll find out about Brian, because here's the deal. Go back through the coaches at LSU. They are given the resources to win. They have a great recruiting base, and they win national championships when they're operating at peak efficiency. All of them did.
Yeah.
Post Jerry DiNardo. So, you go through this and you realize, like, a lot of these guys won. So he's got everything he needs. If he doesn't, then maybe his stature as an elite coach will drop. But, he has certainly won.
And his approval rating in that town has to be through the roof. They're ahead of schedule.
They just won the West. They went to the SEC championship game in year one.
In year one. Beat Alabama in an all-timer.
And you can talk about, well, he should have done this. They went to the SEC title game in year one. They beat Alabama his first year at LSU. You talk about ingratiating yourself to the fan base, no matter how goofy that accent was. When you win football games on the field and you go to the title game, you're going to be happy with the coach. There's no way around that. Now, expectations are ratcheted up right now. There's no doubt about that. And that's true for Mike. Mike is beloved right now for Florida State fans, but this is a different set of expectations.
Yes.
And now you're held to a new standard because you've been able to raise the floor. So I think this is a fascinating game and portends of a fascinating year.
Yeah, all the way around for both teams. And we'll be watching LSU with great interest after this game because win or lose, what they go on to do helps fortify Florida State's case as they go on. If you're trying to make an argument that Florida State is a top 5 team later in the year when it matters, Florida State, let's say they could lose today, take care of business against Clemson. But if LSU continues to ascend and win games in the West and they're a favorite in the West to go back to Atlanta, the SEC championship game, Florida State's got a better case about their season and their strength of schedule.
It certainly didn't hurt that LSU went on to win the West last year after we beat them.
Correct, and that's something that Mike Norvell has not done yet at Florida State. Now, he's won championships, conference championships, and been to a New Year's Six Bowl with a group of 5 team, but he has not gone the place that Brian Kelly has gone at LSU, and it only took Brian Kelly 1 year. Now, I'll grant you, Brian had fewer issues to start than Mike Norvell did. Mike had about 50 million of them. But we're at a point now where you can say also that LSU has been to places, LSU has seen some things, and LSU has won in those situations. Florida State has not yet. As confident as everybody is, coaching staff and roster, Florida State still has to prove it to themselves with the result. And they get that today and be on their way.
Yeah, the oddity of this game, LSU is favored, according to the experts, favored by 2.5 points. And I feel like Florida State is under more pressure to win the game.
Correct.
I
totally agree.
Yeah, that is the interesting thing is that Florida State is an underdog in the game. Generally speaking, when you're an underdog, if you lose a game and it's well played, people say, well, you weren't supposed to win the game. But I think Florida State fans feel like they should win this game. They feel like they're ready to win this game. They've got the pieces they need, and they're loaded. We keep documenting what they've done from a personnel standpoint. And at the end of the day, your quarterback is a better quarterback. And so, you should win games like this. If you're going to be a championship caliber team, this is the kind of game you win.
Right.
You christen that and you win this game and you move on. Now, that's not to say you don't have bad days at the office or lose a game or two. Alabama's trying to go undefeated. They didn't last year, and, it happens. But I'm saying you win big games in these moments when you are finally arriving at that level. And frankly, I think Florida State has arrived at that level.
Well, and that's where, maybe I'm the guy who pumps it a little bit too much on staff, but this is what I believe. I speak honestly. I think this is a playoff or bust year. You have a lot of transitions going on around college football at the power programs, including in your own division. Well, not a division anymore, in your own conference against Clemson, your rival, who you haven't beaten since 2014. Can we get off the schneid later this month, please? Can we get that done?
Just bring it back home. Bring it back home.
It's back here today. I get that. But what I'm saying is, yes, there is urgency here in this moment for that reason. This is going to be a critical month ahead. Today is a critical game. But I'll go back to what I said about the coaching staff and the players. They've got to prove it to themselves. They can have all the belief in the world, but there will be a moment of adversity, either today or in 3 weeks' time when they play Clemson at the end of the month. There's going to be a moment of adversity where they have to go into uncharted territory. LSU has been there. They have won those games. They beat Alabama in overtime. They went to the SEC championship. They've got a division banner if they fly such a thing in Baton Rouge. Florida State still has to, in that moment of push or shove, come through. The good news for Florida State is Jordan Travis had such a moment last year against a bad opponent in Florida, I'll grant you, but he was a one-man show to go win that football game. So he has proven that if all else fails, I can deliver. And they might need that today against a really game opponent in LSU.
We've talked a lot. Again, I keep coming back to the quarterbacks. I think that it's going to be tough sledding for both offenses running the ball. I think both teams are going to revert to throwing the football in the second half of this game. Both have the ability to scramble, so some of those rushing numbers may be negated in terms of the negative for a running back because the quarterbacks make plays. But I think that where these offenses will succeed today will be throwing the football. And you'd like to think, based on the evidence you saw last year, Florida State has the better passer of the two teams. And so I just have so much trust in that kid right now. That story, the Jordan Travis story, we talked about it here last night when we did the Seminole Headlines show in there, and it was a lot of fun to do. But one of the things that we led with was you just can't say enough about the Jordan Travis story. People have heard it a million times, especially if you're a Nole now, and we watched it play out last year. But I'm honest when I tell you that there was real concern that I had 2 years ago about whether or not he could quarterback this team. And you remember I was critical openly about it. It's our job to assess what we see. And I talked to a number of people in the game of football. You're talking about former players, former coaches, scouts, etc., who all echoed that sentiment, who all said, look, he's a nice college player. We'll see. To see where he went from to where he is now. Well, I've been covering this program for 25 years. I've been watching football for 40-something years old. I don't really recall anybody making this kind of a transformation.
Correct.
He went from really just a guy that could run around and make a play here or there to a quarterback, a refined, pre-snap, know where I'm going with the ball, make my reads, throw the ball accurately, and then I will go and take it a step further to the present, why you would have confidence. He did all of that last year, that huge step of which we speak. He took another step in the spring and fall camp. We've watched nothing but forward growth, upward mobility, over and over and over again. We went to Charlotte, covered the ACC kickoff, talked to Jordan Travis, had him on the show. He is calmer.
Yeah.
He is more confident.
He's at peace.
He's completely at peace with who he is, what the expectations are of him. He's not worried about all of that stuff on the periphery. He's a guy that welcomed it. You know, he never wanted, and I'll say this, he never exuded nor wanted to lead. This was a guy that really wasn't a natural-born leader, and that's not a rip. Not everybody is. He was kind of sheepish.
Yep.
Didn't like the press, didn't like to have cameras in his face, didn't like to have to talk about it, his own abilities. If he had a great game, he didn't really want to talk about it, you know? He's a very modest guy. But he has taken a big step in that area of his life as well. At some point, he accepted that if you're the starting quarterback at Florida State and you make the plays that he did a year ago and have the games that he did a year ago when you had to have it, okay, on the road against Miami, at the end of the year against Florida, a comeback against Oklahoma, when you had to have it, that dude made the plays, and somewhere along the way, he just accepted, this is now who I am. These people look to me to lead, and I can do that, and I'm okay with it. And that's why you go into the game tonight. Like, do you think Jordan Travis is worried? I don't. They may not win. They may get outplayed. Something could happen where, you know, it's a close game and you lose at the end. I don't know. But it's not going to be because Jordan Travis doesn't believe that he belongs in this moment.
Correct. And to document the play on the field for a second, last year's game was the coming out party for all of us, you know, fans and media alike. And why was it? We get to see practice, but why was it the coming out party? Because Jordan Travis had two exceptional days before the LSU game last year, one in the spring and one in the fall, where he could not miss, and he took it to a different level. I remember, I think the first one in the spring, you might not have been there, and you're like, I don't know, man. But then you were there for the one in the fall, and you saw it, where he went to a different place, said, okay, maybe he gets hot, and he can play like that. But then he takes the field against LSU last year. And those days in camp were what we saw on the field in the game.
Oh,
and it looked so slow for him.
It was casual,
Yes.
Yeah, it was very casual.
But
he seemed at ease.
To follow through on that now with this year, in spring, to your point, and in fall camp, the one we just watched last month, those great days that he had a year ago, there were only two of them, more days than not, he competed in practice at that level. The evolution that he's been on, at some point there's diminishing returns, but for him, it's still exponential how much better and more detailed sound he's getting. Now, watch he lays an egg tonight. I doubt he will, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just, he is, I'm done. You said it before. You're done doubting him. He just continues to get better and better.
Final thing on this, and we'll move on, and we'll talk some more about the actual matchup. I think a way to pay tribute to that sentiment is that I don't go to the practices thinking at all about how Jordan Travis is going to play. I go watch other aspects of this team. I go try to find guys that, you know, I think need to take a step forward, segment groups that got to get better. a player is emerging from somewhere else and you start to see his ascension and you say, I kind of want to document this as well because I can think he's going somewhere else, with his career. So I put Jordan Travis over here and just set it and forget it. Yeah. I'm going to each of these practices assuming he's going to play at an elite level. Now, that is a world removed from where we were a couple of years ago.
A small note on that, too. When we say he's had a good camp, he didn't run a whole lot.
Didn't have to.
He didn't have to. There were reminder plays that happened in 11-on-11. We're like, oh, yeah, he can do that.
Yeah.
But when we say he had a good camp, he's not terrorizing the defense by scrambling around and making stuff up.
Throwing the football. Yeah, and that is the greatest area of growth. And so that's why when you start talking about could he win the Heisman, what are the statistics that he has to have, it's strange because in some ways his expertise now as a passer and the overall team balance ensures in a way that perhaps he can't because the numbers are going to be balanced. He's going to take whatever he has to, the defense is giving him instead of padding stats.
Correct. He's equally good with 185 passing and 120 rushing or 360 passing and 42 rushing or 18 rushing, whatever it is. And that's he's player agnostic and he's play agnostic. Whatever the play is there to be made, he runs it. And when he's gone next year, when we're doing these shows live in Ireland before the kickoff against
Brock
Georgia
Glenn
Tech,
is starting.
That's going to be a lot of fun to break down, but it's also going to be scary because Jordan Travis has gotten us really comfortable really quickly.
I'm excited for the Brock Glenn era, though.
I am
will
too,
tell you,
but still.
Yeah. I'm just letting you know. Speaking of which, Brock Cunningham says he thinks there's going to be fireworks. Thanks for the contribution to what we do there, Brock. He has a 42-35. Brock, that's a sentiment that a lot of people have about this game is that both defenses are going to have a hard time stopping these two quarterbacks. Tony writes, is this the starting five offensive line for the full season? Saying there are no injuries or do some backups push the starters out? I'd be surprised if this starting five stayed the same all season.
Correct.
Offensive line is a position where there's a lot of attrition. It's awfully difficult to get through a season without bumps and bruises in such a violent area of the field. But I also say this. It's because they have 8 to 10 guys that they really, really like. And it's hard to believe those guys aren't going to continue to push for starting positions. I mean, Bless Harris, you can almost say you feel bad for Bless Harris. Bless Harris is a plus starting offensive tackle anywhere in this conference. Any program, Clemson included, he's a plus player at tackle.
Correct.
He's on the bench today because they brought in Byers and because Robert Scott got healthy on the other side. So now it looks like the two tackles are going to be two guys that we trust, and Bless Harris would start for anybody.
Yeah, a very good development that Robert Scott was healthy towards the end, like the middle portion of camp. Like Fabian, they ramped up a little bit later than Rob, but Rob looked good. He won the job back if he had to. He did, and it was different. It was a different level. When going against Jared Verse or some of the better guys, Robert was just more sound. Doesn't mean that the other guys are bad. They have 3 legitimately good tackles. I would not be surprised at all to see Bless Harris in this game. If he starts on the bench, then I'm not surprised if he's out there to start a series or 2. If for whatever reason Bless Harris starts, I wouldn't be shocked to see Jeremiah Byers come in and rotate at right tackle. But on that point, Alex Atkins said even before preseason camp started, he's talked about mixing and matching within the course of a game, but he talked before camp started that they like different guys for different opponents. Based upon the construction of the opponent week to week, he's in a unique position to rotate guys in and out.
Think about what you're saying.
That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard if I talked to myself 5 years ago.
3 years ago.
3 years ago.
2 years ago, maybe. I mean, this is insane how far that group has come as well. Again, it's what leads to expectations, but there's no chance you feel this good about a team if you can't block. And Florida State, up until last year, couldn't block anybody.
Right.
And now you don't really worry about it. You're talking about juggling starters. Now you're talking about having 7, 8, 9 guys that you trust to start in a football game on the offensive line. You couldn't find 2 3 years ago. You couldn't find 2. You maybe had 1.
And if that one guy was listed as questionable or doubtful, you were, I don't know, maybe you were fading the Noles just a little bit, even if they were getting 14, 20 points.
We've done Warchant Gameday or some semblance of Warchant Gameday for a long time. Obviously, we weren't always with Warchant, but we've done pregame shows together for a very long time. And there were days where we were talking about aspects of the game. You and I are talking, and it could be like a meme. I'm like Ben Affleck when they were promoting the really bad Superman movie or whatever.
Or the one where he's smoking the cigarette
Oh,
outside.
yeah, and he's just staring off in the distance while the interviewer's asking him a question. I'm sitting there talking to you, listening to you talk after I make a point, and you're making a point, and this is 2 years ago, and I'm sitting there thinking, what are we doing? Why the hell are we having this conversation? They can't block anybody. Why are we talking about this? And we had a 2-hour show to do, and you're like, well, and then maybe this, and then maybe that. And in my head, I hear, hello, darkness, my old friend, because I'm thinking they can't block anybody. Yeah. What does it matter? And so now.
And my retort would be, yeah, you're right.
But now here we are in a position where we're talking about, I don't know, they got 9 guys they could start. They got 5 good starters. They could rotate them. Hell, they just may get bored and give some guys a chance in mid-game. Like, what have they done? It's amazing.
Well, that's okay. So you make college game day with that. If you can't block Samford, we're screwed.
Yeah.
We are screwed.
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully this time tomorrow, as we're driving back, going to Tallahassee, we could say, if you can block LSU, you are good.
Oh, if you can block LSU, you can block anybody in the country.
Yes. And the thing is, there are different guys who have different strengths. To Alex Atkins' point, for example, Casey Roddick and Dimitri Emanuel might be your starting guards tonight. If the top of the depth chart is correct, that's exactly who your starters are going to be at left guard and right guard. Darius Washington, for my money, is the best pass protector in terms of the interior of the offensive line.
Darius had a better camp than Meach.
Darius did have a very good camp. Didn't see that coming. And good for him.
Not at all.
Not at all. But it was a pleasant surprise. Development. We're also at a place now where development happens at this program, and it happens on the offensive line. And look, they could cultivate other options as well. Keandre Jones is somebody we haven't talked about a whole lot, but as camp went later, he was involved more. Maybe you can read between the tea leaves there.
I'm
not saying that he's going to be, and you might have needed to. Might have amend something in the middle of camp. But that's a dude that can rotate for you at guard, and he is not below replacement level.
Well, and I would say that one area where I think it does make perfect sense to rotate guys on the offensive line and not be worried about cohesiveness is the goal line.
Yeah.
Like when you get down inside the red zone, inside the 5-yard line,
yeah.
Keandre Jones better be out there. Yeah. He's a giant man. They have Casey Roddick and him and those guys, they were brought in for short yardage situations. They were brought in to fight for jobs, but those were guys that you knew you could win with 4th and 1, 3rd and inches. Those are guys that are going to move somebody back. And that's the other part about what we've seen in modern football. It is hard to get people uprooted. If you're playing a top 10 caliber team, top 20 caliber team, they all have 320-pound hosses in the middle. You can't get them out of there.
Yeah, and it happens. That's something that also happens every Sunday in the pros.
Yeah.
If it's only a long one.
Yeah, the Eagles are the only one that do it.
Well, but they have to create a gimmick to do it, and it works, and it's blunt force.
It's awesome.
But that's what it takes.
Well, they got a quarterback with legs the size of Texas.
This is one thing that the great Gene Deckerhoff would always do when he was setting up a play. He would talk about the length of the yard. It's a long one, or it's a short one. It makes such a huge difference. If you're in 4th and goal, and you're on the play-by-play on ESPN.com, and it says at the 1, yeah, well, if it's at the 1.5, I don't like your chances. 1.5, if you're telegraphing to the world that you're lining up and you're trying to go straight ahead, and it's 1.5 yards, and you're playing an SEC front or a Clemson,
right?
Is it a coin flip at best? If you're going straight ahead and running a dive, it's a coin flip at best.
I don't. It's very difficult. They finally have some guys though. You do feel good about it. Wins inches, but it's
correct.
Goal line, I think we're going to
Keandre and Roddick. You want those two guys in the interior.
Both
those
are going to have to be
human beings
in the game. It's Warchant Game Day as we broadcast live from the Wall Street Plaza here. Starting to fill up, and the sun is behind the clouds. It's perfect right now. Everybody get themselves a cool beverage. Cheers to all of you guys. We got 20 more minutes here, and then the music will start up. We'll take a quick break, and we will have some music for you now in that break.
DJ Mind.
In about 4 minutes with more Warchant Game Day.
The finest football program in the state and rolling into 2023 with a Heisman contender. Stay connected with everything Florida State over at the ultimate Seminole sports source, Warchant.com. Expert insight from 5-star Irish O'Fell, the wit and perspective of FSU encyclopedia Corey Clark, the latest on FSU recruiting with entrenched reporter Michael Langston, and the most active community of FSU fans anywhere. Warchant.com is part of the On3 network with a national team of reporters and resources that have created industry-leading consensus recruiting ratings, transfer portal rankings, and NIL analytics. Head over to Warchant.com to take advantage of this offer as FSU heads into a 2023 season with sky-high expectations.
There's fun to be had every night at the Corner Pocket. Take-home prizes on Trivia Tuesdays and Beer Bingo Thursdays. And kickstart your weekend with Martini Fridays. Plus, happy hour runs every weekday and game day specials every time the Noles take the field. Watch all the best games at the Corner Pocket's Vegas Wall, featuring 560 inches of flat-screen TV heaven.
Oh, really?
The best food, the best drinks, and the best place to watch all the games. Tallahassee loves the Corner Pocket.
This is all the benefits of being a Warchant subscriber, right? If you're watching right now, you can look along with me. You'll see Garnet and Gold 10% off, special Warchant Days promos each month with exclusive offers for Warchant.com members, priority access and free gear at Warchant events. That's doing some things, right? Got to do it. Ask Warchant anything subscriber-only shows featuring the entire staff, a little Q&A with the entire staff, and coming soon, a new mobile app with improved functionality and less ads. That's really a good thing. Join the largest FSU fan community on the internet, everybody, at warchant.com. It's not close. Let's go. Get it on. Sign up today. So everybody knows, Eddie, that you are a spectacular cook. Of course they know that. If they go into Bumpa's, the food is always good. I mean, everything on the menu.
Mm-hmm.
Everything at Gordo's is delicious. I always, of course, get the bungalow chungla, as I call it.
The panko lechon, Jeff.
Is that what is the pork?
The panko lechon, Jeff.
Okay, the bungalow chungla. It's delicious. All these things, all the items, everything you do, a master cook. But, sir, I would ask you, what is a skill that you possess that you're particularly proud of that nobody would know and that you could share with us here?
Growing hair, Jeff. Growing hair.
Gordo's, bringing the flavor and flair of Cuban food to Tallahassee since 1996. Packing them in, here they are at the Wall Street Plaza in downtown Orlando. It is Warchant Game Day. About 20 more minutes, and then we will be tailgating with all of you, getting set for Florida State LSU. Obviously, time for Who's Hot, Who's Cold, as brought to you by our friends at Barano Heating and Air Conditioning. Always appreciate Barano. They've been on board with us and everything we've done from the many stops along the way, Tom.
Well, yes, and they've been busy, I would say, in the
very
last
busy.
6 weeks or so in Tallahassee, where it's been unbearable. Much more pleasant today. It's
Yeah,
warm, but it's got a nice breeze.
This isn't terrible. If you're in the shade, we are right now. But yeah, not terrible. Just
You notice the people like in the middle. Like there's a palm tree shadow, and they're
yeah,
standing right. It's very
should
wise.
put the camera around again and look at how this
Yep.
is starting to fill out. This is a little bit different. Ben, flip that sucker around and let's take a look at the crowd as they make their way in here to the Wall Street Plaza.
Wave
Good
to
times.
everybody at home,
Here
folks.
you
You're on
guys,
TV.
way, you're on TV. There
Go
you
Noles.
go. There we go. That's a sea of Noles right there. A sea of Noles. It's only going to get more and more as the day goes on. That's a good thing. All right, right back here. Who's hot? Who's cold? Well, they haven't played a game. So it's awfully difficult to
Who's had a
decide
good camp?
Who's had a good camp? Well, that's virtually everybody. I mean, they really have seen a lot of guys take big steps forward in this camp. I just, if you're going to ask who's hot, I think you'd have to start with Braden Fisk.
Yeah.
Braden Fisk is a guy that came over from Western Michigan, a defensive tackle. You really didn't know what to expect. He was coming off of an injury. By definition, he's playing at a school that obviously each Saturday did not allow him to see the caliber of athlete that he's going to be playing against at Florida State in practice and then obviously on the field within the ACC. So you weren't sure what he was going to be. We watched him in spring. He was a guy that could only go through sort of the stretches and all the cardiovascular stuff, but he could not participate. So fall camp rolls around and, all right, here's a chance for him to throw on the pads and to give you a good sense of who he is. And who he is a violent machine.
Yep.
I mean, this is a guy whose hands are violent, who's fast off the ball, who loves to compete down in, down out. A lot of the stereotypes you hear about guys who compete and how you coach on the field and all that motor and all. No, he's a good football player who's tough and disruptive. I think, again, violent describes him very well. I suggest that you guys will have fun watching Braden Fisk today. He's got a chance to be a big difference maker. I'll say he emerged from camp one of many who would fall into the category of who's hot. But I'm going to go with Braden Fisk. I thought he did the most to raise his stock in the shortest period of time.
I'll agree with you, and I'll just expound on Braden Fisk because of the variety of things that he can do. It's a lot of fun to watch this guy play the game. He can get after the passer from the interior, and in the modern game, I think in a way that's sometimes more valuable than an edge rush, pass rush, because it creates more discomfort for a quarterback. If you look at Jaden Daniels' advanced numbers last year, for example, in terms of sack avoidance, if there was a pressure on the quarterback, he went down far more often than most others. In fact, according to Sports Info Solutions, in the last 5 years, he's in the bottom 15% in terms of sack avoidance. If there's a pressure, he's going down a hell of a lot more often than 85% of all other quarterbacks measured in the last 5 years. Braden Fisk, if he looks tonight like he did in camp, you're going to see him make an impact on this game. But that's just one facet of what he brings. They can line him up at edge. Even though he's a giant human being, they can line him up at edge, and he's quick enough to play there.
Yeah.
They can also use him as essentially a battering ram to free up Jared Verse. This is something that Adam Fuller's been very good at. You go back a couple years to Jermaine Johnson and Keir Thomas working in tandem. Yes, they lined up on the opposite sides of the football an awful lot, but there were times when Keir Thomas and Jermaine Johnson would line up standing next to each other before the snap. And the twists and the stunts and the games that Adam Fuller could throw at opposing quarterbacks were fun to watch. They can do that now with Braden Fisk. They will literally, in some instances, run Braden Fisk into two offensive linemen with no regard for his own safety.
And he doesn't care.
And he does not care.
It's awesome to watch.
It's really fun to watch.
Yeah, so on the cold side, I don't really know where you're going to go with
Mason
that.
Smith.
Well, yeah, the other team. Yeah. No,
Daryl Jackson.
We can do Daryl Jackson. Yeah. No, I actually think I would probably
Vandravius Jacobs.
Yeah, it's got to be the right answer, unfortunately. Vandravius Jacobs is a guy we haven't talked a lot about today. We haven't talked about him at all today. And really at the end of camp, we didn't talk about him either.
He's not on the two deep.
I can't get into details on that. None of us can. He's healthy, guys. I think that what happens when you got young players, especially talented young players who come in and they have some success early, sometimes I think maybe they think that some things are going to be given to them. And, this is just me kind of expounding.
Open speculation.
Yeah, open speculation.
No hint whatsoever.
I think that perhaps there's a young man that may have been late to a meeting, may have missed a class. I don't know that. I can't tell you that is 100% accurate. But I can tell you that when a guy has played as well as he has in camp and been a difference maker from the get-go.
In spring.
And then he's not on the two deep, like name not even mentioned, you kind of got to think there's a disciplinary thing going on there.
But it's not awful news because Destin Hill and Winston Wright both earned their jobs. They both earned it. It's not given to them because this one stud freshman is, for whatever reason, not on the two deep. Those guys were better than Vandravius in fall camp. Vandravius in spring camp was easily Florida State's best option in the slot, easily. But in fall camp, I think what Destin did, and I think what Winston did specifically in the last week, is better than what we saw from Vandravius in spring.
I have a question, actually. I'll just kind of, it may be rhetorical. It's kind of interesting. Do we see Vandravius Jacobs tonight? Does he play in
I
this
wouldn't
game?
be stunned if he was in the rotation, but I will say this. We were fading Hakeem Williams in spring, And Mike Norvell came out and said what you said all along. He did it finally because they're on the other side of it. But that Hakeem wasn't in shape. He said, hey, well, now he's in shape. He just came out and said that in a sentence in a post-presser
the first
availability.
week he was there that we saw him in spring, I said to you, the guy is a hamburger away from being a tight end. And so as soon as we saw
Maybe
him,
a slider.
yeah, I was like, there's no chance. And then he came into fall camp and was much more polished, leaner, all of those things. So I felt good about it.
And he did make the
grab
2
those
deep.
sunglasses from my best friend.
Oh,
Matt
there you
Britton
go.
Right there.
What's up, Matt? Hope the drive up was pleasant.
There we go.
That looks like a cooler too.
That does. That
All right,
yeah.
bonus.
All right.
But Hakeem is on the 2 deep. And Hakeem earned a spot on the 2 deep. And I will say, in the last 2 weeks of fall camp has been very impressive. I would not be surprised if he rotated in. Not with consistency.
So
you play Keon and Johnny, but I'm just saying, if he had an appearance tonight in a multi-receiver set, it wouldn't stun me one bit.
we're kind of at the part of the show here is, late in the show, where you can start to speculate a little bit about guys you think will surprise, guys you think have an opportunity to maybe play a significant role in this game that weren't talked about as frequently during the course of camp. You just named one. Hakeem Williams could play a big part in tonight's game. It would not be surprising if that guy made a big contested catch, big body like him.
Route running is night and day. That's another thing for Dugans. Good job.
Better.
Yeah,
So, there is a chance that guy could end up becoming a little bit more of a impact player in tonight's game than we really talked about. And again, we just did this with the offensive line when we were talking about how comical it is that we went from doing shows where you felt kind of bereft of hope and because you couldn't block anybody. To doing shows now where like, oh man, I forgot about that other weapon that we haven't talked about for an hour and a half because there's 7 other guys that have been really, really good in camp. And Hakeem is not 7th on the depth chart, but he's down the depth chart. And yet there's a guy that I think could play a role tonight.
I agree. And there were some moments in camp later on where he was working with the ones and Jordan Travis. And again, we don't really talk about the depth chart as we see it in practice too much, but we can write observations. So I'm not giving away a state secret here that there were a couple of big plays where he makes the play and Jordan Travis is throwing him the football. And I will tell you, there were a couple of those moments where the play was so remarkable that Jordan Travis ran over to Hakeem to give him praise.
Yeah.
What does that tell you? That Jordan Travis trusts and is gaining trust in Hakeem Williams. Again, he's not going to be the focal point of the offense, folks. This is not like a bait and switch where Florida State is going to run Hakeem Williams out there over Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman. That's not happening. But after spring, I would have told you there's little to no chance that he has any impact unless it's garbage time in 2023. Now, after fall camp, no, he can have an impact outside of garbage time tonight.
Yeah, neither of us would be surprised by that. Briley asked a good question here. Jeff and Tom, have either of you ever been this confident for an FSU game when playing another team that is ranked in the top 10?
Yeah.
Well, I go back a ways, Briley, and the answer is
He does.
absolutely I have been this confident. I've been more confident than I am tonight. I've been, obviously with the opportunity to cover the 98 team and the 99 team. But when I first broke into the business, I was covering a team that was predicted to perhaps be the first ever to go wire to wire in college football, and they did exactly that. And really, anytime they played a ranked team, I was unfazed. I thought Florida State would win the game going away. I will say in 2013, once we knew that Jameis, and really the coming out party, Briley, was that Pitt game, right? Once Jameis showed that he was that, you and I go to that Clemson game feeling like they're going to hammer Clemson.
Barry White. We were listening to Barry White.
Listening to Barry White, yeah. And so that was a good night. But so the point is, like, we had some moments where that team I was very confident of. I'll tell you this. I've been this confident and been proven wrong. I was very, very confident way back when we got blown out by Miami in the first game of the year, the famed 31-0 game.
Yeah.
But I guess let me see if he asked if we were covering. Yeah, so just as a fan, maybe I have been. But also Oregon, we thought we were going to pound Oregon.
And Auburn, and I was wrong about that. The
we
national
won the
championship
game,
against
yeah,
Auburn.
yeah,
now,
yeah.
you go on a 28-3 run after you stop giving your same signals, dumbass.
Yeah.
But that game was one of them. And that year earlier, this is a cheap one. Remember, Miami was ranked in the top 10 in 2013. They it was number 1 versus number 10.
And we laughed about that.
Yes.
We thought we
so,
killed
Briley,
them.
to me, for me personally, that's easily the number one answer. That was a 1 versus 10 in name only. They had to put somebody at 10.
Well, if you recall, they barely beat Wake the week before on a last-second touchdown just so they could stay. And we were rooting for them to score because if they hadn't, the game would have really fallen in significance.
Okay, so do you know where we were when we got that news? It's strange. It's bad radio or TV if I let it breathe. So it was the Bobby Bowden ceremony on the field for the NC State game.
On the field.
We were down on the field watching.
Field.
So they're honoring Bobby's playing the spear, and we're like, "Hey, Miami came back. It's gonna be top 10 because game day likely comes in those situations."
Well, right, we were worried that they were going to botch it like they usually do, typical Canes. So there it was. So there was that. But I get the sentiment though, Briley. The sentiment basically is that look. This team has been really good since the end of last year, and that here they are now coming into a high-profile game against a team that's ranked higher than they are and that they are technically underdogs against. And yet we're speaking as two guys that I think absolutely agree we think Florida State should win this game. Yes. Now, again, I am not trying to diminish what LSU brings to the table here. I am rather uplifting what I think Florida State is.
Yeah, it's not earth-shattering if they don't. I'm not going to be in the car and be like, oh, my God, that's an awful loss, Mike.
The only way it would be earth-shattering is if somehow Florida State were to lose this game in blowout fashion.
Okay, fair.
Fair. At that point, you would really have to wonder how prepared were they, because their talent suggests that should not happen.
Well,
but we know games can get out of the control. We'll see.
That's a Wednesday show I don't want to do. But if we do have to have that show, it'll be, well, why the hell were you so confident? You don't know what you're looking at?
Yeah, but
I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about everybody projecting such confidence coming into this game. They feel really good about themselves. It's not just us. They feel really, really good about themselves.
And why wouldn't they, Tom? Because here's the thing. Okay, I'll remove my opinion. I'll tell you that I talked to, once again, same thing. I talked to a scout for the New England Patriots at one of the practices. And he was talking about this team having upwards of 10 to 12 guys that are going to get drafted.
Yeah.
So it's not my opinion that, that Florida State's good. You've got scouts at practice that are there to see one of 10 to 12 players, quote unquote, that they think are going to get drafted pretty high.
Yeah. Isn't that nice to see again, by the way?
Oh,
man. It looks like they're ride sharing together, running in an 18-passenger van, because it used to be you'd have a scout once a week. Yeah. And now you have like 8 dudes at practice every day. Now you look around,
the guy for the Dolphins, the guy for the Bears, the guy for the Patriots, the guy for the Seahawks,
guy for the Bucks. Like, I hope you're looking at this guy.
Well, I keep telling him to look at the tight end.
And look at Darrell Jackson.
Yeah, well, correct. But then don't tell anybody about it. Yeah. But, so for Jaheim, I'm like, that guy's going to be really good. Question mark for tonight as we get set, about 10 more minutes here. How do you think Jaheim is going to play tonight? Because that's really a story in and of itself. Last year, we kind of had some question marks about that secondary throughout the course of the season. Some guys we thought would have a good year didn't. Kevin Noles got hurt and really wasn't himself. And then, obviously, we saw what happened with Duke Cooper. By the way, yesterday there was a play where Duke Cooper broke up a pass intended for Warren Thompson.
Yes.
The TCU Colorado
they got into it a couple
game.
times, too. Warren knocked his helmet off.
Yeah. So, the point would be that, last year we had some guys we thought would take the step, and then they didn't take the step. It's not the same thing coming into this year. This is a little bit different. Now we're talking about guys that we think have the ability, but don't have a ton of experience. At the safety.
Correct.
Keem has a ton of experience. We'll see how much.
I feel good about Kevin Noles,
too. I do, too.
I'll put it this way. If Kevin Noles is fully healthy this season, I think he's going to be in that rotation a lot. A lot.
Like maybe start
Jaheim. I think, and we talked about this with the secondary in general. I think you're solid at corner with Fentrell and Renardo on the outside. Azaria is going to play a ton. I think you're solid with Greedy. If there's going to be feast or famine with them, I think it's because of scheme. I think the way Jaheim Brown plays, he's feast or famine because he's 100 miles an hour no matter what he does. LaMarcus played like that. LaMarcus was a better player, don't get me wrong. But it's the same kind of thing. Like, if Shaheem's going to make a mistake, it's going to be a woeful because there is no half-ass in what he does. It is 100 miles an hour. But I'm interested to see what his assignment is tonight. I don't know. I don't know what his assignment is going to be. Are they going to spy Daniels? Are they going to have him lingering around the line of scrimmage? Are they going to have him on Jason Taylor's kid, the tight end? Like, what is Shaheem's motivation here? Is it exactly the same thing as what Jamie Robinson did for us? Or do they move that responsibility around as the game goes along? In this day and age of college football, there's only 2 linebackers on the field anyway. But does he act as a third linebacker? Do they go more empty with the linebackers until, call it a dime or whatever you want to call it these days? But, Deloach or Bethune is out there alone, and then Shaheem's acting as a second linebacker for you. That's one thing that's very hard to figure out in camp. Is like, what is the role and the game plan going to be for a specific opponent? Because offensive scout teams are terrible. It's hard to know what the hell you're looking at. But I just wonder what Shaheem's role will be.
Well, I do think, too, the other aspect of this game that we have to be concerned with and watch carefully early on is LSU is going to try to exploit FSU's linebackers in coverage.
Correct.
And let's just see how they hold up. That's an area that I'll be watching in any of the big games that we play this year. Most coaches see opportunities there against opposing linebackers. Ours have been serviceable. This is not an elite unit. It's one of the few areas in which that's the case. So I think you get worried about that a little bit. We'll watch and see early on how they do. But I feel pretty good about every other aspect of this game. And then offensively, I think Florida State will just see what LSU is trying to take away. Yeah. And then do the opposite because they can.
That's really, the thing. Yeah, like we talk about this on player props. If you're talking about receiving yards over a certain number for Johnny Wilson or Keon Coleman, or how about Trey Benson, 84.5 rushing yards over under? Like, we get questions like that all the time. But it's impossible. That's impossible. 2-3 years ago, if Jayshon Corbin was under 70 yards, I'm playing Jayshon Corbin because I know that Mike Norvell and Kenny Dillingham at the time are going to scheme up a chunk run. He'll get 80% of that in one play, and then all he's got to do is have a couple of good runs, and he's going to hit the over because they can't throw it. But now this offense is so balanced that you can't play that game of saying, I expect Johnny Wilson specifically is going to have a big night tonight. I don't know. Because Jordan is going to take a look at the line of scrimmage, find the one-on-one, and that's where the football is going to go.
Big year for Johnny. Johnny has an opportunity to be a much better player than he was a year ago. He was feast or famine as well, since we talk about feast or famine. When he made plays, he made a lot of them, and Florida State was the better for it. Then there were days where he was really hurting you for an entire half, not catching the ball. So I think those are the things that you worry about a little bit, but I expect him to be more consistent, and I expect Keon Coleman to help him out an awful lot being on the other side. I expect that you have some dynamic players in the slot that are going to be better. You're better at tight end. The balance should give you a lot of one-on-one opportunities, and all any offense is trying to scheme up in the passing game is one-on-one opportunities in isolation. They should see a ton of that tonight. Now, listen, LSU's equipped to do something about it. They got guys in coverage. They got guys at linebacker that can cover. So it'll be interesting to see how they play as well. But you got to win those one-on-one matchups.
Exactly. And this is something I don't know that we hit on at all before today, but I don't think the scout team periods, other than install and landmarks, where do I need to be when, did much for either of these teams. The best preparation that Florida State had for tonight, the best preparation LSU had for tonight is when they go good on good. The only guy that can do Jaden Daniels even close on Florida State's roster is Jordan Travis. The only guy that can scramble, like vice versa. You go the other way. The only guy that can do Jordan Travis in practice is Jaden Daniels in terms of the mobility. So these teams getting prepared for tonight's game, it's about good on good. That's what prepared them all camp long.
Early in games where you have dynamic athletes, no matter how much you prepare and you watch film and you see guys' speed and you know what the numbers read and what they project to the league, it is a different deal out on that field with your adrenaline going, and you have to confront it the first time a guy gets the corner. I had one guy say that when Daniels caught the corner against him last year, one of the coaches said when he ran past and they heard the sound of the wind, they went, oh, that's a little different. We're going to have to take different angles, guys. That's a little different. So, and I think that's true for people the first time they get a load of Trey Benson and he gets the corner. You're like, oh, big man can move a little bit here. Yeah.
Maintained his speed even as a larger human being. He put in a lot of work to get heavier, but he's maintained his speed, which is important.
It's time to wrap it up and bring on some music and start the tailgating for real. Before we do anything we need to do in terms of thanks, anything we need to do, certainly we want to thank our friends at DeLuna. I know that too.
We do. We have an announcement on a sponsor. The Godfather, Ed Lemmix himself, is sponsoring the Warchant Gameday post-game show, which will take place tonight.
Yeah, there we go, Ed. Good job.
Thank you, Ed. Welcome aboard. DeLuna Coffee, DeLunaCoffee.com. We'll tell you more about that in the post-game show tonight. That will take place at Hooch. Now, here's the thing. Wall Street Plaza is only going to get more rowdy as today goes.
You're damn right.
It's going to be a mess in all the right ways tonight after the game. So if you want to hear the Warchant post-game show after it's all over, you're going to want to get close to the stage at Hooch. They're going to have a DJ bumping. DJ Mind has been awesome covering us during breaks
He's about
today.
to be back up here,
He's a really nice gentleman. They're going to be bumping a lot of music today, live acts, DJs. It's going to be fun out here at the Wall Street Plaza. But if you want to hear the post-game show as presented by DeLuna Coffee, get near that catty-cornered stage at Hooch after the game. Hopefully we're going until 1-0 a.m.
Prediction as we round it out, we always have to give one. I've said all week long I like Florida State in this game. I'm going to stick with that prediction. I'll take Florida State 41-24 tonight to beat LSU. Woo! Offensive explosions. Hey, listen, Jordan's been great all camp. I expect him to be great tonight. Could be a little bit more high scoring than that, but I'm going to trust this defense to try to get some big stops, maybe a couple turnovers. 41-24 Noles.
So the people have seen the scores behind us. We got to stay true to it. You said a 17-point margin of victory. I agree. Florida State by 17 points tonight, 38-21. LSU is a game opponent, but Florida State is ready for this moment. You can feel the emotion building here at Wall Street. You can feel the energy from the Noles. There's going to be a lot of energy in that building tonight. Cannot wait to see it.
We applaud all of you. Thank you very much for coming out. Let's have fun. Go Noles, everybody. Be good. Woo!